Welcome to the Fragments of Me. This channel shares fictional emotional stories inspired by real-life situations. All characters and events are created for storytelling and entertainment purposes only.
Look, I'm not gonna sugarcoat this, because honestly, I'm tired of pretending everything was perfect when it wasn't. I'm Abby. I'm 32, and before you judge me, just hear me out. Everyone thinks they know what happened, but they don't know the real story. They don't know what it's like to be completely dependent on someone else for every single thing you need. Travis made decent money in his trade work, sure, but that doesn't mean I felt like I had any freedom. Every time I needed something, and I mean anything, I had to ask him. New clothes for myself? Ask Travis. Want to get my hair done? Ask Travis. Our son Colton needed new school supplies? Ask Travis first to make sure it fits the budget. Do you know how that feels? To be a grown woman who has to justify buying a coffee when you're out running errands? I stayed home with Colton since he was born, which was supposed to be this beautiful thing, right? But nobody talks about how isolating it is. How you lose yourself completely. Travis would come home from work tired and want to relax, and I get that, I really do. But I'd been home all day with an 8-year-old, cleaning the same messes over and over, making the same meals, having the same conversations about homework and chores. When I tried to talk to Travis about my day, I could see his eyes glaze over. What was I going to say anyway? That I spent 20 minutes trying to get Colton to put his shoes on the right feet? That I had to Google how to get grape jelly out of carpet again? The worst part was when Colton needed new clothes for school. Kids grow so fast, and his pants were getting too short. I mentioned it to Travis, and he just sighed and said we'd have to wait until next paycheck. Wait. Like my kid looking presentable at school was some luxury expense. I felt so powerless in that moment. Here I am, a mother who can't even buy her own child clothes without permission. That's when I started thinking there had to be another way. My friend Raven had been posting about her new business venture on Facebook. She was being kind of mysterious about it, just saying she was finally making her own money and feeling independent. When I asked her about it privately, she told me she'd started creating content online. Not anything crazy, she said. Just photos and videos that people paid to see. She showed me her earnings from the last month, and I nearly choked. She made more in 4 weeks than Travis brought home in 2 months. More than I'd seen in my bank account since before Colton was born. At first I thought it was too risky, too weird, but then I started thinking about it differently. This was the modern world, right? People made money online all the time. Influencers, content creators, entrepreneurs. Why should I be stuck in some 1950s housewife role when there were opportunities out there? Raven explained how it worked. You set your own boundaries, you control everything, and you can make real money. Financial independence. That phrase kept echoing in my head. I started small, just taking some photos while Colton was at school and Travis was at work. Nothing extreme, just flattering pictures in nice outfits. I told myself it was like being a model, which plenty of respectable women did. The response was immediate. Within a week, I had subscribers, and within 2 weeks, I had made more money than I'd seen in years. Real money in an account with my name on it. The feeling was incredible. For the first time since becoming a mother, I felt like I existed as more than just Travis's wife or Colton's mom. I was Abby again, and people wanted to see me, wanted to pay attention to me. The comments were so different from anything I got at home. These men appreciated effort. They noticed when I tried something new with my hair or wore a different outfit. When was the last time Travis complimented me on anything other than dinner? I opened my own bank account. Something I hadn't had since we got married. Travis always said it was easier to manage money together, but really it meant he managed the money and I asked for permission to spend it. Having my own account felt like breathing after holding my breath for years. Every deposit notification on my phone made me feel more confident, more independent. When Travis started noticing I was taking more photos, I just told him I was exploring photography as a hobby. When he questioned new outfits, I said I was selling some old clothes online and treating myself with the profits. These weren't really lies. I was taking photos, and I was making money from content, and I was buying new things. I just wasn't explaining the whole picture because I knew he wouldn't understand. Travis was traditional in ways that worked for him but felt suffocating for me. The subscribers kept growing, and so did my confidence. These were successful men who appreciated a woman who took care of herself, who understood that beauty and femininity had value. They weren't asking me to justify every purchase or sighing when I mentioned something I needed. They were eager to pay for my time and attention. It felt like the validation I hadn't realized I was starving for. Some nights, after Travis fell asleep, I'd lie there planning my next content, thinking about how I could grow my subscriber base, dreaming about what financial independence would really look like. I could buy Colton whatever he needed without checking with anyone. I could get my hair done without guilt. I could contribute to our household instead of just being an expense. The money was adding up faster than I expected. In 2 months, I'd saved more than we typically had in our emergency fund. I felt proud of myself in a way I hadn't felt since before I became a mother. I was building something, creating something, earning something. This wasn't just about taking pictures. This was about reclaiming my independence and proving I could contribute financially to our family. Travis didn't need to know every detail of how I was making money. Men compartmentalized their work lives all the time. He never told me about every conversation he had with clients or every decision he made on job sites. This was my work, my business, my contribution. I was finally pulling my weight financially, and honestly, I was proud of that. I was tired of feeling like a burden, tired of being the one who only spent money instead of making it. When Raven suggested I upgrade my equipment and take things more seriously, I didn't hesitate. This wasn't just a hobby anymore. It was a legitimate business opportunity. I was an entrepreneur now, and like any business owner, I needed to invest in my success. The fact that Travis couldn't see it that way wasn't my problem to solve. By month 3, my content had evolved. Subscribers were requesting more specific types of photos, and honestly, the pay was too good to ignore. I upgraded my phone, bought professional lighting, and started treating this like the serious business it had become. When Travis noticed the new equipment, I told him I'd sold some jewelry I never wore and decided to invest in better photography gear. Technically true. I had been taking photos, just not the landscape shots he probably imagined. The money was flowing in ways I'd never experienced. I was making more than Travis some months, and that felt incredible. Finally, I was contributing equally to our household finances, except I was doing it on my own terms. No boss telling me what to do, no schedule I had to follow, no one else controlling my earning potential. This was pure entrepreneurship, and I was good at it. Travis started asking more questions about my new business venture. Where was I selling photos? How much was I making? Could he see my portfolio? I deflected most of his questions because honestly, I didn't owe him a detailed breakdown of my work, any more than he owed me a play-by-play of every conversation he had with clients. This was my thing, and I was handling it just fine without his input or approval. The attention from subscribers was addictive in the best way. These men appreciated effort in ways that Travis had stopped doing years ago. When I tried a new hairstyle or bought a new outfit, they noticed immediately. They complimented me, they asked about my day, they treated me like I was interesting and worth their time. At home, Travis barely looked up from his phone half the time when I walked in the room. I started staying up later, responding to messages and planning content. It was exciting having projects and goals that were completely mine. When Travis asked what I was doing on my phone so late, I'd tell him I was just scrolling social media or texting with friends. He never pressed for details, which was fine by me. I was building something real here. Something that gave me purpose beyond just managing household tasks and childcare. My friend Viva started making comments about how I was always on my phone now, how I seemed different, more distracted. I could tell she was probably jealous that I'd found something profitable, while she was still complaining about her part-time job that barely covered her car payment. Success changes people's attitudes toward you, and not always in supportive ways. Even my closest friends seemed uncomfortable with my new confidence and financial independence. The best part was having my own money to spend without explanation. I could buy Colton new clothes without checking the budget first. I could get my nails done without feeling guilty. I could contribute to household expenses and still have money left over for myself. This was what financial freedom felt like, and I wondered why I'd waited so long to pursue it. Some of my content was getting more attention than others, and I started paying attention to what subscribers responded to most. It was basic business sense. Give customers what they want, and they'll pay premium prices for it. The more personal and exclusive the content, the more they were willing to pay. I wasn't doing anything that countless other women weren't doing online. This was just the modern economy, and I was smart enough to capitalize on it. Travis seemed increasingly irritated with my phone usage and my new purchases, but I was getting tired of his negativity. Here I was, finally contributing financially to our family, building a successful business from nothing, and instead of being proud of me, he was nitpicking about how I spent my time. It felt like he preferred me dependent and struggling rather than independent and successful. The subscriber count kept growing, and so did my income. I was reinvesting profits back into the business. Better equipment, nicer outfits, occasional professional photos. Any legitimate business owner would do the same thing. The fact that my business happened to involve photography of myself didn't make it less valid than any other entrepreneurial venture. I started feeling confident in ways I hadn't felt since college. I was good at this, I was successful at this, and I was finally proving that I could build something valuable on my own. The validation was incredible, and honestly, it made me realize how long I'd been settling for feeling invisible and underappreciated at home. I deserved better than that, and finally, I was getting it. That's when everything changed. Travis came home from work early one Tuesday, and his whole energy was different. He wasn't his usual tired, predictable self. He was angry in a way I'd never seen before. Apparently, one of his coworkers had shown him something on his phone, and Travis recognized me immediately. Screenshots of my content shared around his workplace like some kind of joke. The confrontation was explosive. Travis was yelling about how could I do this, what about our son, what about our family's reputation. He kept saying I was humiliating Colton, humiliating him, humiliating our entire family. I tried to explain that this was a legitimate business, that I was finally contributing financially, that I was being entrepreneurial and modern. But he wasn't hearing any of it. What really got to me was his attitude. Like I was some kind of criminal instead of a successful businesswoman. Here I was making more money than him some months, building a profitable venture from nothing, and he was acting like I was doing something shameful. It was so typical. A man can work any job he wants, but a woman has to fit into some narrow definition of acceptable work or she's somehow wrong. I told him exactly what I thought. This was the modern world, not 1950. Women had the right to make their own money, control their own bodies, and build their own businesses. If he was too insecure and old-fashioned to handle having a successful wife, that was his problem to work through. I wasn't going to apologize for being independent and profitable when I'd spent years being financially dependent on him. The fight escalated when he found out about my separate bank account. He acted like I'd been hiding assets or something, when really, I was just protecting my business income from his controlling attitudes about money. Any smart business person keeps their business finances separate from household finances, but Travis saw it as deception instead of good business practice. He tried to use Colton as leverage, saying our son would be embarrassed, that kids at school might find out, that I was being selfish. But honestly, Colton was 8 years old. Kids that age don't even understand adult business ventures. And if other parents had problems with how I made money, that said more about their closed-minded attitudes than it did about my choices. I told Travis he needed to get with the times. This was how people made money now. Content creation was a legitimate industry, and I was good at it. If he couldn't handle having a wife who was successful and independent, maybe he needed to examine his own insecurities instead of trying to control what I did with my life and my body. The conversation ended with me making it clear that I wasn't stopping my business for anyone. I'd finally found something I was good at, something that gave me financial freedom and personal satisfaction. If Travis couldn't accept that, he could adjust his expectations about what kind of wife he wanted to be married to. I wasn't going back to asking permission for every purchase and feeling like a burden on the household finances. That night, I lay in bed thinking about how different my life had become. 6 months ago, I was completely dependent on Travis for everything. Now, I was running a successful business, making my own money, and finally feeling like myself again. If he couldn't see that as progress, if he couldn't be proud of my success, then maybe he wasn't the supportive partner I thought he was. I wasn't going to let his old-fashioned attitudes sabotage the best thing that had happened to me in years. This was my business, my money, my choice, and I'd worked too hard building it to let anyone tear it down now. After that fight, Travis kept pushing for couples counseling. He kept saying we needed to work through this together, that we needed professional help to save our marriage. But honestly, I could see right through that. He wanted a counselor to convince me to stop my business, to go back to being financially dependent on him. He wanted someone with authority to tell me I was wrong for wanting independence and success. I refused to go. This wasn't a relationship problem. This was Travis having control issues. I wasn't about to pay someone to listen to him complain about my legitimate business while they probably took his side because of their own outdated views about women and work. Counselors were just as likely to be judgmental about content creation as anyone else. Instead of getting help, Travis got worse. He started making little comments in front of Colton about how Mommy was always on her phone, how Mommy cared more about taking pictures than spending time with family. It was so manipulative, trying to turn our son against me because he couldn't handle my success. I started defending myself, explaining to Colton that Mommy was working, that taking pictures was my job, just like Daddy had his job. Travis's sister Darla decided to stick her nose into our business too. She called me one afternoon and suggested we meet for coffee to talk about what was happening with Travis. I should have known it was going to be an ambush. She spent an hour lecturing me about family values, about what Colton needed from his mother, about how I was destroying my marriage for money. I finally snapped and told her exactly what I thought. She was a single woman with no kids, who had no idea what it was like to sacrifice your entire identity for your family, only to be treated like a financial burden. She didn't understand what it felt like to build something successful from nothing, to finally have your own money and independence. Her opinion about my business was worthless because she'd never been in my situation. The conversation got heated when she brought up Colton's well-being. She acted like me, having a successful business somehow made me a bad mother. I told her that being a financially contributing parent made me a better role model for my son than sitting around being dependent on his father. Colton needed to see that his mother was capable and successful, not just someone who cleaned house and asked for permission to buy groceries. By the time I left that coffee shop, I was done with Travis's family and their judgment. They wanted me to stay in my place, to be the dependent housewife who never challenged Travis's control over our finances. They couldn't handle me being successful and independent because it threatened their whole traditional family dynamic. Travis started working more hours, claiming he needed to pick up extra shifts. But I knew he was avoiding home because he couldn't stand seeing me successful and confident. He preferred me insecure and needy, asking him for permission and validation. Now that I had my own source of income and self-worth, he didn't know how to relate to me anymore. The worst part was how he started treating my business like it was some kind of embarrassing hobby instead of the profitable venture it actually was. When bills came in, he'd make comments about how my business should cover certain expenses since I was making so much money. But when I tried to discuss business investments or growth strategies, he'd shut down and act like I was talking nonsense. I started spending more time with Raven and other women who understood entrepreneurship and independence. They got it. They understood what it felt like to build something from nothing, to finally have control over your own financial future. Being around them made me realize how unsupportive Travis had become, how threatened he was by my success, instead of being proud of it. My subscriber base kept growing, And I started exploring partnerships with other content creators. This was real business networking, building professional relationships that could help expand my brand and increase my income. But Travis saw it as me spending time with those people instead of focusing on our family. The money was better than ever, and I was reinvesting it wisely. Better equipment, professional photography sessions, marketing strategies. I was treating this like the serious business it had become. But Travis couldn't see past his own insecurities to recognize my entrepreneurial success. Things came to a head when Colton started having problems at school. His teacher called saying he'd been getting into fights with classmates, that he seemed distracted and angry. When we met with the school counselor, she mentioned that some kids had been teasing Colton about something they'd seen online. My heart sank, but I tried to stay calm. Later I found out that somehow, some of the parents had discovered my content, and their kids had started saying things to Colton. Mean things about his mom. I was furious, not at myself, but at these narrow-minded parents who were teaching their children to bully and judge other people's families. This was exactly the kind of small-town mentality that I was trying to rise above. When the school requested a meeting with both parents, I went in ready to defend my family. But instead of supporting me, Travis sat there silently, while the principal and counselor basically suggested that my business was causing problems for Colton. They recommended that I consider how my online presence might be affecting my son's social situation at school. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were asking me to change my legitimate business because other parents were too immature to teach their children proper behavior. They were essentially asking me to sacrifice my financial independence because some people in our community were judgmental and close-minded. I told them exactly what I thought. If parents weren't teaching their children to respect other families and mind their own business, that was a parenting problem, not a problem with my work. Colton needed to learn that people would always find reasons to judge and criticize, and the best response was to be confident in your family's choices. The meeting ended with me making it clear that I wouldn't be changing my business practices to accommodate other people's prejudices. If the school couldn't handle teaching students appropriate behavior and respect for different families, maybe we needed to consider other educational options for Colton. Travis was silent during the drive home, and that silence felt more judgmental than any argument we'd had. When we got home, he finally exploded. He said I was prioritizing my business over our son's well-being, that I was being selfish and stubborn. He accused me of caring more about money and attention than about Colton's happiness and social development. I fought back hard. I told him that teaching Colton to be ashamed of his mother's success would damage him far more than dealing with some temporary teasing from kids whose parents obviously had nothing better to do than gossip. I was showing Colton that women could be independent and successful, that we didn't have to accept other people's limitations on our lives. The fight escalated when Travis threatened to take action if I didn't stop. He talked about custody, about divorce, about protecting Colton from the consequences of my choices. I couldn't believe he was threatening to break up our family because he couldn't handle having a successful, independent wife. That's when I realized how serious this had become. Travis wasn't just disapproving of my business, he was actively working against me, trying to use our son as leverage to control my choices. He was willing to destroy our marriage rather than support my success and independence. I told him that if he wanted to leave, he could leave. But I wasn't going to be manipulated into giving up the best thing that had ever happened to me professionally. I'd built something real and profitable, and I wasn't going to let his insecurity and control issues destroy it. That night, I lay awake thinking about how much our relationship had changed. When I was dependent and struggling, Travis was comfortable. But as soon as I became successful and independent, he couldn't handle it. That told me everything I needed to know about what kind of partner he really was. I was completely shocked when Travis actually followed through on his threats. He filed for divorce and immediately started fighting for full custody of Colton. I couldn't believe he was willing to tear our family apart just because he couldn't accept my success. He hired some lawyer who specialized in custody cases, and suddenly I was dealing with legal paperwork and court dates. The whole thing felt like a nightmare. Travis was painting me as some kind of unfit mother just because I had a successful online business. His lawyer was trying to argue that my work was somehow harmful to Colton's well-being, that I was prioritizing money over my son's needs. It was completely unfair and based on outdated, judgmental attitudes about women's work. I hired my own lawyer and prepared to fight back. I had documentation of my income, proof that I was contributing significantly to our household finances, evidence that I was a good mother who just happened to have a non-traditional career. I wasn't going to let Travis use the legal system to punish me for being independent and successful. The custody evaluation process was humiliating. Some court-appointed social worker came to interview me, asking invasive questions about my business, my relationship with Colton, my priorities as a mother. She acted like my online work was somehow suspicious or inappropriate, instead of recognizing it as legitimate entrepreneurship. During the evaluation, I tried to explain that I was modeling independence and success for my son. I was showing him that women could build businesses and contribute financially to their families. I was teaching him that people's judgments and prejudices shouldn't limit what you can achieve in life. But the evaluator seemed more interested in Travis's narrative about stability and traditional family values. She kept asking about my work schedule, my online presence, my time management. She treated my business success like it was somehow evidence of poor mothering instead of evidence of my capability and ambition. Meanwhile, my business was suffering because of all the stress and legal drama. Some subscribers had found out about the custody battle through public records and local gossip, and I was losing income. The negative attention was affecting my brand and my ability to grow my business, which just made the whole situation more frustrating. Travis started dating someone new during the separation. Some woman named Serena, who worked at Colton's school. Of course, he found someone conventional and traditional, someone who would never challenge his need to be the primary breadwinner and decision-maker, someone who would never threaten his ego by being too successful or independent. The worst part was watching how quickly Colton seemed to adjust to spending time with Travis and his new girlfriend. She was playing the role of the perfect stepmother, all nurturing and supportive, making me look like the problematic parent by comparison. It was so manipulative, using a child's confusion during divorce to make me seem like the bad guy. When the custody decision came down, I was devastated. The judge awarded primary custody to Travis, saying something about stability and the child's best interests. I was ordered to pay child support, which felt like adding insult to injury. Here I was, the successful entrepreneur, being treated like the irresponsible parent. My business completely collapsed after the custody ruling became public. The negative publicity destroyed my reputation and my subscriber base. Platform policies and community standards became an issue when people started reporting my content as inappropriate. Everything I'd built over months was gone in a matter of weeks. I had to get a regular job for the first time in years, working for someone else again, asking for permission to take time off, earning a fraction of what I'd been making independently. It felt like going backwards in every possible way.